Thank you. Just a quick introduction. So I'm the Air Quality Director, and many of you worked over the past year with Zach Anderud, who is our hired dust expert here at the State of Utah Division of Air Quality. Unfortunately for us, he left at the end of May, and so we're now recruiting for the next dust scientist position. And so I'm going to cover what he prepared and hopefully do it a bit of justice as we move forward. So the open questions that we have as it relates to Great Salt Lake dust are, of course, understanding the current impacts of the dust that could be generated from the Great Salt Lake, and then what those have been in the past, and then what those could be in the future without mitigation. And ultimately, kind of what the health impacts of those would be as well, as we look at metal content as well as the particulate content. Get the right way here. So we have three initiatives that we're working on. One is expanding the monitoring network, expanding it so that we can understand from the work of Kevin Perry in the past, we know that the dust sources on the lake are dispersed around the lake, and we know that with any given wind event, the receptors of that dust would be dispersed along that lake shoreline as well. So we had a robust monitoring network for the purpose that it was designed for. That was looking at winter inversion particulate matter, and then the PM10 monitors that would capture the larger component of that were really focused on the population centers along the Wasatch Front. Next, we will be and have been looking at historical trends. So understanding what we could identify as the source of dust that has been impacting the monitors that we have in place, and how that has changed over time with weather patterns and drying lake bed. And then the third component is looking at the chemistry, and so what are the potential health impacts from the metals and other components of that dust in those urban areas. So start with the UDORN, the Utah Dust Observatory and Research Network. So this is a network of approximately 20 monitoring stations that we're building up over time to answer the questions of where's the dust coming from, what are those impacts, and provide near real-time observations to the public that they can use to plan their activities and events and know what the potential impacts of those are from a given dust event. So our maps are available on our website as well as here. We have our existing network and then the expanded network of those red monitors that will enhance that ability to capture and collect that information. And so adding resources to existing monitoring sites as well as establishing new monitoring sites in the future. So the existing monitoring sites here where we're going to be adding more components of real-time PM10 air monitoring capabilities are listed here, and again, those are on the map as well. And then the expansion piece is looking at additional sites, both surrounding, kind of filling those gap areas around the Great Salt Lake, but also looking beyond that all the way down to Delta, Corinne, and Park Valley to understand what's coming into the area from other potential dust sources in more distant areas. The monitoring we're looking to do is really different than the monitoring we do now. So a lot of the focus now has been on winter particulate formation. And so the monitors we have not been as both receptive at short-term impacts from dust, kind of looking at a 24-hour sample versus continuous and real-time information. But we also kind of have to have both. We have to be able to collect those filters on a 24-hour basis or longer to get enough particle collection so that we can actually analyze those filters and understand what is in that dust so we can look at potential health impacts in the future. We're also building up an ability here to provide that information in real time as well. And so that will be a repository for information, both the historical and current information. This is an example of a similar site looking at lake levels, meaning storage capacity in lakes. But as that builds out with the new dust scientists, that'll be one of our priorities here in the very near future. Which brings us to the legacy database. So with the current monitoring network that we have the ability to look in the past at those filters that we've both collected and retained and be able to understand where potential dust sources have been, looking at meteorology and other things. And so one of the things that will be populated in that database is looking at potential dust sources beyond the Great Salt Lake that have the potential to impact our population centers along the Wasatch Front. And those have been identified here in the map, showing that there are many pathways, and we have seen many dust events in the past where we've seen that the source of that dust, you can see on the satellite imagery, has been all the way as far as the central part of Nevada has been the source of the dust that it's impacted the Wasatch Front area. And so as we've looked at those, being able to look at correlations with lake levels, and then being able to identify from those back trajectory analyses, understanding where that potential dust source was that was monitored on that day. So you can see that we are seeing an increase at lower lake levels of the number of dust events that we're capturing in our urban areas, as many as 15 in a year, and then be able to attribute those based on those long-range transport lookbacks or satellite images and things like that where that dust originated. So the black dots represent the Great Salt Lake influence dust events at our current monitoring network, and then the other is the all dust sources, and you can see that varies over time, but we see a component of both. So next, looking at the lake level and the historical mix of dust events as well. So the colors of the graph represent the darkest brown there is the Great Salt Lake dust. The yellow is a combination of Great Salt Lake and West Desert dust. Then we have the orange that is more of a southern component, so it's coming usually from a south wind event ahead of a storm front. And seeing how those have both increased in the last years as drought has persisted not only in Utah but throughout the West. And then finally, combining these all together, busy graph, I'm sorry, but you can look at it at your leisure when you look at the slides. Again, looking at where the dust is coming from, the number of events that we've seen on a annual basis, the contribution of both lake level in the dashed line that is connected there, and then the annual precipitation that varies from year to year. And we can see that all these work together to impact what we're observing on a daily basis, and what we're going to be able to do with this more robust observation and research network is really capture that over time in the future as well, and be able to analyze and target how to respond to that, both with mornings, public education and outreach, as well as mitigation efforts on the Great Salt Lake and other places to reduce that impact from the dust. And finally, the dust metals inventory. So we have a large collection of past filters that we were able to analyze. And so we were able to identify particular days that were impacted by either Great Salt Lake dust events, combination events, or those southern events, sending those out for analysis and finding the funding to do that. You can see the actual net mass on those filters, the dates, and then looking at the metals components that we'll be able to identify from those. And we identified those based on, again, those past wind events. And then what that will lead to is right now there are no health-based standards for the metals that are potentially in the Great Salt Lake dust. And so working with the State Health Department and Department of Natural Resources, looking at identifying indicators that we can use, recommendations that we can use to identify what a target level would be for a healthy air as we look at growing and managing the lake here in the future. So with that, that's our work that we're doing now, and happy to take questions later. Thank you.